Now that we understand Ultrabeat's geography, let's take a deep look at Ultrabeat's audio signal flow, which, by the way, is not an easy thing to learn, but I'm going to show you everything I know about Ultrabeat. And it doesn't matter whether you're using an old version of Logic or the latest version of Logic. Ultrabeat's signal flow hasn't changed a bit. Let's get on with audio signal flow because it is essential to understand audio signal flow if you're going to understand any plugin. Now, we all know that 90% of Logic's soft synths and plugins have a signal flow that moves from left to right. And Ultrabeat works pretty much the same way, except for one little twist at the end. Here's how it works. First, a voice has to be triggered. And as I said before, Ultrabeat has 25 possible voices, and each one is completely independent from the other. This means that every voice has its own individual synth settings. The audio signal flow begins with the sound generators, oscillators 1 and 2, and the noise source. Now, these sound generators can then be routed into the filter and distortion section, or passed directly to the output, but either way, they are combined together to form one voice which is shipped off to the EQ and output section. This output section is just for that individual voice. Remember, each voice has its own settings. Now from here, the signal flow suddenly changes direction and comes back to the mixer section, where all these individual voices come together for the first time before they are mixed and sent to Logic's outputs. Remember, all of the settings on this part of Ultrabeat's interface can be set and modified independently, voice by voice. Now, that's the signal flow. Let's talk a little bit about how these voices are triggered. You can click on these little piano notes on the left side of the interface to manually audition each voice, or you can program a MIDI sequence from the step sequencer to rhythmically perform each individual voice. That's right, every voice has its own step sequencer. Or, if you prefer, you can program patterns right in Logic's sequencer to trigger the voices. Or you can use your MIDI keyboard or any other external controller to trigger the voices. It's really up to you. In fact, you can actually combine all three if you want. You see, Ultrabeat's just looking for those MIDI note on and note offs, wherever they come from. And when you use Ultrabeat in a live situation, this interaction becomes part of the game plan. Now let's take a look at these independent voices I've been talking about. Here's voice 1, and let's pretend it's triggering the oscillator, the noise source, and oscillator 2. And each source can have a separate setting. Now, if I select another voice, it can use just oscillator 1, the ring modulator, and oscillator 2, and it too can have completely different settings. And a third voice, well, I think you're getting the point. So every time you program a voice, it's like every voice has its own Ultrabeat faceplate, and you can tweak and change knob settings as you please on a voice-by-voice basis. It's pretty cool. The filter and distortion settings work the same way. Every voice can have its own separate filter and distortion setting, and you have a choice on a voice-per-voice basis whether or not you want to send the generators into the filter and distortion section or directly to the voice output and EQ section. It's really up to you. For instance, in this example, let's say I don't want the noise to go into the filter and distortion. I want it to go directly out. It's my choice. Or I can do the same with oscillator 2. And all of these decisions are made on a voice-by-voice basis. Remember that the output and EQ section works the same way. It adjusts the output and EQ for an individual voice. Then those voices, one by one, come back into the mixer and output section, where you can set their final levels and their pans and their outputs. Every voice has its own little channel strip. Essentially, the mixer and output section is the true output section of Ultrabeat, where all those independent voices finally come together. There's no doubt that Ultrabeat's faceplate is pretty complicated, but if you can wrap your head around the concept that it's actually 25 separate faceplates, and that all of the settings on this part of Ultrabeat's interface can be set and modified independently voice by voice, then you'll be taking one giant step in the understanding of how this monster really works. Well, that's the audio signal flow in broad strokes. In the next section, we're going to start looking at things in a little more detail. So, are you ready? Let's go.